Hey, this is Crazy Horse. It is January 28th, almost the end of the first month of 2021, and I still haven't gone through my 20 things we learned in 2020. I'm just not, well, I'm not feeling inspired to even go through it. I mean, I wrote this whole long thing. I mean, obviously, it's stuff like the government, the WHO and the CDC don't know how to report deaths. Apparently that's challenging. No one's ever isolated this virus in a lab. We're now being told to wear 2 masks, even though 1 mask does nothing. 2 masks with particle of virus that's, something like 10 times smaller than the holes in the mask. 2 masks that are 10 times too big as far as the particulates go. Is not any better than 1, but since 1 is absolutely useless, I guess 2 times 0 is 0, so 2 is useless. But you can really maybe double down on your your virtue signaling. You're wearing 2 masks, you really care about everybody, and you really want to save the planet and save the world, all that kind of bullshit. Bill of Rights is in the toilet. Freedom of speech is gone. The president, former president now, among many others, have been banned from Twitter. Who gives a shit? Twitter's a fucking joke. My account on Facebook is still limited. I have no way of unlimiting it. I have no idea how to unlimit it. It's not published anywhere. My requests to Facebook to explain that to me have gone unanswered. Whatever. Nobody needs to hear what I have to say. It's optional. These private companies are not required to broadcast my message. But one of the major things we learned in 2020 is there's no reliable news media, and social media is under control of tech oligarchs and probably the same liberal money that controls the news media. So where do you get your news? I'm not saying I know the answer to that. I'm saying what we learned in 2020 is there is no reliable place to gather news. There's no reliable news source, certainly not the major news media. The mainstream media, magazines, newspapers, they're all extremely biased towards the left. I think anyone who doesn't know that at this point, even if you're liberal, if you don't know that, I mean, okay, I accept that you can't admit it, but anybody who doesn't know that is living on a different planet. So the Bill of Rights, the First Amendment is currently under suspension. Nobody has the right to speak. In other countries, if you limit people's social media postings, you can be fined. We have no protection for that in this country. The Second Amendment will be next to be gone. I mean, it's already been gutted by gun control laws. It's there to protect the First Amendment. The First Amendment's gone, so the Second Amendment will have to go with it. The Third Amendment reads, in part, no soldier shall, in time of peace, be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a manner prescribed by the law. The amendment makes it clear that in times of war and or national emergency, which this epidemic, so-called pandemic, is a national emergency as declared by President Trump on, March 1st last year. It is a national emergency. Therefore, you, as a citizen of the U.S., have your rights suspended because of a national emergency. You now are forced to follow Fauci and the WHO and the CDC dictates for your own good, for herd immunity. You must now wear a mask to not protect yourself, but protect others. And the protection of others is no longer your choice because it's a national emergency. But the Third Amendment says in times of peace, as in times of war, you cannot be forced by the federal government to do anything that's not already included in your rights and responsibilities. You cannot be forced to house soldiers, which implies you cannot be forced to take an injection. You cannot be forced to take a test. You cannot be forced to do anything because we're in a time of war. The Third Amendment states that. So first is shot in the toilet. Second is gutted and on its way out. Third, we already know is going to be canceled when they require you to take a vaccine. And of course, they won't lock you up if you don't take it. You just won't be able to survive without it. So they'll get around that. But in essence, they will have gutted the Third Amendment as well. So what else have we learned in 2020? Well, we learned that Gates and Fauci are would-be dictators. There's really no other way to characterize them. These guys are power-hungry little guys that want to have control over you, want to have control over the world. They know what's better for you than you do. They want to take away your freedom of choice, and they want to choose everything for you. They want to tell you how to live. They are totalitarians. While the liberal media is going crazy about Trump being a fascist, this country is actually being run by tech oligarchs and medical oligarchs and totalitarians, and by liberal Democrat mayors and governors who are restricting your rights without any legal way to do that, because it's a time of national emergency and state emergency. So what's the number one thing I learned in 2020? We are living in a communist dictatorship, and we have been for a very long time, probably since World War II. We thought we won World War II, but actually we allowed communism to take a foothold in Russia and Eastern Europe, and that spread to China, and that spread to Southeast Asia. And the wars we fought in Southeast Asia and in Korea for limiting communism were pointless and were an atrocity. And now communism is here. And it's, you no longer get a say in how you live and how you run your government. It's up to the big money oligarchs, just like in Russia. That's the lesson, really, from 2020. If you think it matters if Trump or Biden is president, you're wrong. We are living in a totalitarian state that is run by big money, is run by the Federal Reserve banks and the banking families behind that, and it is run by the tech oligarchs who decide your freedom of speech. So prepare yourself. Our way of life will be unrecognizable in 10 years, even in 5 years. And I'm not saying that to scare everybody, some dire warning. I just see it happening. It's already changing in this country. It's already hard to make a living. It's already hard to have freedom. You can't leave your house in California. 33 million people locked down in a statewide prison, which is why we're leaving at the end of February. Florida says they're not ever going to lock down again. The governor said that. Let's hope it's true. Maybe we can make business over there. Certainly better than California. So what have we learned in the past year? Wow, our rights are limited. This country is no longer ours. We're being told what to do by big tech and by the medical industrial big pharma complex. And they're using, race baiting to divide us, split us apart, get us fighting with each other. And it's a crazy world. We learned hospitals are empty while we're in the middle of the biggest pandemic in the world. We learned we can't trust the news. We learned that everything they're telling us about this is bullshit. So what else that we learned in our history classes growing up is complete bullshit? Was there a bubonic plague? Did it kill millions and millions of people? Did the Spanish flu kill millions of people? from the research I've done, Spanish flu came out of the trenches of World War I, and it was more about poverty and dysentery and sickness from people living with dead bodies in open trenches and out in frozen fields and trenches. And Spanish flu was all hype, never really happened. Can you believe anything you were taught in history class based on what you know about the way they report COVID deaths? Can you really? What about 9/11? I mean, can you believe any of that? WT7 was wired for destruction that was imploded and dropped in its own footprint. I hate to say it, but if one building was wired, they were all three wired. And why were those buildings wired? Because they were full of toxic chemicals that they couldn't remove except at the cost of millions, maybe billions of dollars. They had to get the cancer-causing agents out of there. I'm looking up a May 1st, 2001 article, businessinsurance.com, about the Port Authority of New York losing in federal court a $600 million claim for asbestos abatement against their insurance companies for the World Trade Center, New York's major airports, and other Port Authority properties. So they were estimating the World Trade Center asbestos removal at something like $200 million. They tried to get the insurance companies to pay for it, and they failed. That was in mid-2001. At some point, the guy that bought the World Trade Center from the Port Authority, or leased it from them, took out a huge insurance policy against terrorism. He knew that there was a $200 million bill to remove the asbestos. And that all went away when the buildings were demolished. And they settled out of court for $4.55 billion payout from the insurance company to Larry Silverstein for the two terror attacks, or to the two supposed airplanes and whatever brought down WTC7 on 9/11. So what can you believe? If one building was wired, they're all wired. If they can't report deaths properly during a pandemic, if the empty hospitals and all the videos removed for empty hospitals from YouTube, what can you believe? Isn't that what we learned in 2020? Isn't that the main thing we learned? That we're under control of forces we don't know, that we didn't vote for, that we have no influence on, and we can't believe anything they're telling us, and we can't believe what the news media is telling us in any way, shape, or form. Social media is under tight control. I don't know what the answer is, but I know that's what I learned in 2020. This is Crazy Horse. Thank you.
Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.